In this chapter, we will start talking about the immune system. And the immune system, one of the systems that it doesn't have like a clear organ. This system is mostly cell. And we will see some organs that are associated with it, but they are not specifically or exclusively like immune system organs. This system involves a very complex interactions with the cells in order to protect the body from various infections, whether it's bacterial or viral or cancer cells or other form of pathogens or diseases. The immune system can be divided into two big categories or two big areas. The first one is the innate immunity, and think of it, this is the one we are born with it. Okay, this is the default. And the second one is the adaptive immunity. This is the one that our body learn as we are growing. For the innate immunity, it has two arms. The first arm is the surface defenses, like the skin, the hair, the mucus. All of those are barriers, physical barriers and chemical barriers that to protect the inner cavities or the inner side of the body. Okay, all of those, the skin, the hair, and the mucus, are things that we have already seen, so I'm not going to spend much time on them. The other part of the innate immunity is the internal defenses, and those internal defenses, from their name, they are inside the body, inside the blood vessels, inside the lymphatic tissues, inside even the tissue themselves, between the cells. And here we have like several groups of cells and chemicals that would contribute to the innate immunity. Again, the innate immunity is the one we are born with. So those are like mast cells, and basophils, natural killer cells, complement system, and phagocytes, monocytes, neutrophils, and macrophages. So those are the internal defenses. Those cells, they will deal with the bacteria, they will deal with the infections, they will have their own way of responding, which is sometimes it's crucial. So those are the ones that will cause like inflammations, for example, or increase in the temperature and so on. Then the second part is the adaptive immunity or the adaptive immune system. And here we are talking about a complex mechanism to activate the T cells and the B cells, the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocytes. The adaptive immune system would require also something that we will try to understand is the antigen presenting cells. So here we're starting to see talking about antigens, the same one that we talked about in the blood chapter. Here there is no antigen. Here they will recognize the bacteria and they will deal with it based on their recognition. Okay, as I said, like I'm not going to talk about the barrier defenses. All of them are things that we already talked about and we're familiar with. Let's talk about the innate immune responses. And before talking about the innate immune responses, let's cover a little bit of the immune cells. What are those? Or where are they? Or from where they will come? Those cells, as we saw in the blood chapter, they will be raised from the bone marrow. There is the grandmother of blood cells that will divide and it will give us cells. Each cell will commit to a white blood cell. So that is how those white blood cells will develop. So this is the same process that we already saw in the blood, that all of the blood cells are originated from the same multipotent hematopoietic stem cell. So those cells of the immune system, those are the phagocytotic cells like neutrophils, macrophages, lymphocytes, the T cells and B cells, and then we have the cells containing cytoplasmic granules, and we have the granulocytes like the neutrophils, the one that would deal with the parasites, right? We will have the monocytes. All of those are also cells of the immune system. So for the phagocytotic cells, you're already familiar with them, the macrophages. Those, if you remember, the monocytes that they will turn or they will move to the tissues and they will turn into macrophages. Then we have the neutrophils. Those are the one that's responsible for the bacterial infection. And then the monocytes, if they remain within the fluids of the body, within the blood, we will call them monocytes. As we said, those will turn into macrophages if they move into the tissue. Then part of the innate immune system, we have the natural killer cells. And those, from their name, they are natural killer. They are killer. So they will kill other cells or they will kill other damaged cells or infected cells. Technically, those are type of lymphocytes. And the way they kill other cells is they will induce apoptosis. Apoptosis is another term for programmed cell death. So what do? Those natural killer cells would come, and let's assume that this is infected cell. Those are the natural natural killer, they will come and think of it, they will drill a hole in the wall of the infected cell. And from there, they will send some enzymes. Those enzymes, they will activate the apoptotic mechanism of the infected cell, and therefore this cell would kill itself. Okay, so that's the natural killer cells. So those cells would drill a hole in the wall of the infected cell, and then they will release some proteins and some enzymes. Okay, those enzymes, like granzymes, they will go inside and induce apoptosis. Therefore, those are what we call them natural killer cells. Then part also of the innate immune responses is the inflammation. And the inflammation, it's the way of the white blood cells to alert the body, to alert other immune cells that we have a problem in certain area. Inflammation, think for example, like you have a small cut and then there are some bacteria are coming. Usually the mast cells, those are very similar to the basophils, however they are in the tissue. They will start to release histamine. Histamine will go to the blood and start to recruit neutrophils and eosinophils. And those will start to get into the area of the infection. So the histamine is calling them to come to this area, and that is when we will have the inflammation. So histamine is like a contributing factor to inflammation. It's one of the cytokines that's responsible for the inflammatory responses. So inflammation by itself is a good thing as long as we keep it, or the body keep it, under control. But very often, like especially in big like injuries or big damages, inflammation will multitude, and that will cause other types of problems to that patient. But in general, inflammation is a way to alert the other white blood cells that we have an infection, we have a problem in certain area, and you need to come to deal with those problems. So for the inflammation, we have two forms. We have the acute inflammation and the chronic inflammation. Acute is very short. Usually this is the one that will come with cuts, for example, scratches on the skin, things like this. That's the acute inflammation. Bacterial infection, it's short, like we're talking about 3 days. That's acute inflammation. Then we have a chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, usually there is ongoing problem in the body that's inducing those inflammation. And this will take very long time to be seen and to be detected because it builds up. So it's not like acute. The acute goes up and down very soon, like within 5 days, for example. But here it can take months, like in arthritis, for example. Okay, it can take months, sometimes years. Autoimmune disease, in general, all of those will form chronic inflammation. Think of the patients that receive transplants. Transplants sometimes will induce inflammation, and it's chronic inflammation. Then part of the innate immune responses, there is the soluble mediators of the immune system, or if the innate immune system. And those, from their name, those are like soluble materials, like dissolve, although dissolve is not really a good idea to use here. But the point is that they are, within the blood, within the fluids of the body, within the blood or the lymph. And those, they are already think of them pre-made chemicals that deal with infections or deal with certain proteins or certain chemicals, certain other chemicals. Sometimes they will even deal with cells. They will go into the cells and so on. But anyway, those soluble mediators, we have 3 forms. Cytokines. Cytokines, this is a signaling molecule between the immune cells. So for example, if we saw already the histamine, but sometimes we will have other types of those messengers. So sometimes let's say this is a neutrophil, for example, or let's say this is natural killer cell, for example, or lymphocytes. So those cells will send cytokines to alert other cells, and they will come to this place, or to activate them sometimes. Okay, those cytokines sometimes will activate other immune cells, and we will see some examples of. So this is one group. Then the other group is interferons. And interferons, what's happening is those are to alert also, but those usually are to alert non-immune cells. But of course, it can also activate immune cells. But the example we will see is non-immune cells. So what does it do? Let's assume that we have in the liver, we have liver cells, and one of those liver cells got a virus. So there is a virus that comes and infects this cell. So this cell will start to release interferon, and this interferon will alert those cells, like, be aware there is a virus around. So those cells will start to activate their antiviral mechanism. So that is for the interferon. The complement system is a more complex system, but think of it like this. that you have a puzzle jaw, like two pieces of a puzzle, that they can get together only if a third piece is present. So the complement system usually is two proteins don't get together unless there is a pathogen around. So once this pathogen is there, those will come together, will sit together, and will take out the pathogen. Usually they will make it heavy, let it precipitate on the floor of the blood vessels, so macrophages will come and eat it. So that is, in very simple way, or in very simple explanation, that's the complement system. This complement system can go even for the adaptive immune system. It's a very complex system, but for us, just understand the basic, that it is part of the innate immune response. It is part of the soluble mediators of the immune system. Okay, I will stop here. In the following video, I will start talking about the adaptive immune responses.